No, and thank God that you're willing to expose it. Some of the other media people just ignore whatever's going on. And we look at what's happening right now as we continue to build on our national debt. And I would remind people that look at both the funded and unfunded liabilities as we go forward. Our national debt isn't at $30 trillion. It's actually, Chris, at $130 trillion and climbing. And I think when we look at these things and we have a blind eye and a deaf ear to the future of what's going to happen, America is in very serious condition right now. If we don't step up soon and do something, now people tell me, well, it's going to fall on the backs of our children and grandchildren. I said, it's going to fall on our backs right now. But there's something wrong. And I would just suggest this to people. Every one of these people that I serve with just didn't come in and sit down. They ran for office and they got elected. I would just ask the American people, please look at the resumes of the people we're sending to represent you in these offices. And if they don't have a background and at least partially spend some time in the private sector, where you had to actually have money in the bank before you could write a check, and if we went down in our cellars and printed it the way they do at the Treasury, we would be called counterfeiters. But what we're looking at right now really rests on the backs. So first of all, free elections that make sense. But more importantly, please vet these people and find out they've never done anything in their lives except spending hardworking American taxpayers' money. It's absolutely ridiculous. You've got to get people who have been there and had their nose bloodied and understand that these are critical things we do.
Yeah, Congressman, the Senate parliamentarian is reviewing whether or not a portion of this boondoggle is going to even be allowed. We're talking about the $15 an hour mandate for a minimum wage in this country. Last time this was attempted in, I think it was Seattle, it was just absolutely devastating to their jobs and economy. The CBO says that the United States will lose at least 1.4 million jobs if the $15 an hour minimum wage is imposed on this country. It's safe to call Mr. Biden and his Democrats job killers, is it not?
Well, they are job killers. But again, Chris, when was the last time President Biden ever held a real job? For 50 years, he has been a creature of this swamp. He doesn't understand it. Now, he grew up in a very tough section of Pennsylvania, and I understand that, but he left there over 50 years ago. It's not a criticism of the president and what his positions are. It's a fact that if you haven't walked that walk, you shouldn't be talking that talk. This is absolutely horrible. I also still own our businesses back home. We have about 200 people on payroll. We have always looked at minimum wage. Minimum wage is that you look at, it's not a stated government wage, for crying out loud. And certainly what we pay in Butler, Pennsylvania is different than what you pay in New York City. But it's the talent that you bring for the job that's looking for you. And your wages will be based on that. It's not going to be based on anything a government sets up. And I think that when we look at these things, you say, why do they think that people on their own, with their own talents, with their own initiative, with their own drive, can't get into a job where you start at one level, but you keep moving up and moving up and moving up? My dad and my mother started off in a Chevrolet warehouse picking parts in the late 30s, early 40s. My mother ran the switchboard there. My dad was a parts picker, went to World War II, came back home, went on the road selling parts for Chevrolet. In 1953, bought a little one-car dealership, which was expanded, and I bought it from him in 1997. Nobody ever gave us anything, and anything that's given to you really doesn't have the value that it needs to have. You better work for it. You better have sweat equity, and you better have some sleepless nights to understand you're responsible for your own actions.